Even before Ron DeSantis became governor, more power was being given to the governor's office. But this would change dramatically under a Governor DeSantis. In many ways, DeSantis is the culmination of decades of Republican growth in the state. Whether it's the peak remains to be seen. In part 10 of Red, Purple, Blue, A Sea Change in Florida Politics, we look at DeSantis' response to the COVID pandemic, the policies he pushed that expanded the power a Florida governor has, and the dramatic shift in how many Republicans lived in Florida compared to Democrats.
The novel coronavirus, officially named COVID in February 2020, was spreading worldwide. Governor DeSantis faced growing pressure to close the state for everything except essential businesses. On April 1st, he finally issued a stay-at-home order statewide. By September, DeSantis lifted all restrictions on restaurants and other businesses and banned fines against people who refused to wear masks to protect themselves and others from the virus. Then came the 2020 presidential election between former Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. Biden won the election, winning states Trump won in 2016: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona. However, Florida voted for Trump by a slightly higher margin than in 2016. In Sarasota County, Republicans expanded their margin of victory.
In 2016, former President Trump won by 25,000 votes. And in 2020, our goal was to have former President Trump win by 28,000 votes. We came in at 28.6.
At this point, Democrats' registration advantage was only at around 97,000, a 160,000 voter swing toward Republicans from just 2 years earlier.
Leading into the 2020 presidential cycle, Democrats were not out there. We were not knocking on doors. We were not working on voter registration.
The person who was working on voter registration was Florida's Republican Party chair and state senator for Charlotte and Sarasota counties, Joe Gruters, an early backer of Trump in 2016.
What he's accomplished has been incredible, and his insight is very, very good.
While Gruters continued to build the Republican voter base, DeSantis pushed policies that gained national attention. He signed a law which forbid discussion about gender identity and sexual orientation from kindergarten through 3rd grade and was later expanded through 12th. He moved to strip Disney of its self-governing status after Disney criticized the law. He removed Tampa's elected top prosecutor Andrew Warren from office after Warren said he wouldn't enforce a new state abortion restriction or a potential law banning surgeries for transgender children.
He removed Andrew from office because he thought Andrew might do something someday he didn't like. That's Fidel Castro. That's Stalin. That's Kim Jong-un. This is insanity.
DeSantis defeated former Governor Charlie Crist in the 2022 Florida governor's race by 19 points, the largest margin of victory for anyone running for Florida governor since Bob Graham in 1982. DeSantis was the first Republican since Jeb Bush to win Miami-Dade County.
Thank you to Miami-Dade County.
With Democrat Nikki Fried, the agriculture commissioner, opting not to run for re-election, Republicans swept all statewide offices in 2022, finally shutting Democrats out statewide.
I think Florida is a very different state politically than it was 4 years ago. More so than it was from 14 to 18. I think the shift from 18 to 22 is even more dramatic.
Why was it dramatic? One of the reasons: the seniors moving to Florida now are, on average, voting differently than seniors before.
People that were 65 plus 35 years ago maybe leaned a little bit Democrat. People that are 65 plus today, and by people I mean old white middle class plus retirees that can afford to do this sort of stuff, pick up and come to Florida, they are overwhelmingly Republican. They grew up in a time when unions were on the way out. Reagan was president in kind of their formative 20s and 30s, and they're essentially replacing those old Republicans that had moved here 10, 20 years ago that are dying off, that were a mix of Democrats. Old people vote in enormous numbers relative to everybody else. There's a lot of reasons for it, but that's the difference, right? We went from a +2 Democratic registration advantage over Republicans in 2018 to a +2 Republican advantage over Democrats in 2022. That is a fundamentally important shift that cannot be overstated. Not only do Republicans outperform Democrats because of who they are at the polls, now there's more of them. The percentage of Democrats that voted in November was well below 50%, mid 40s. The Republican share of the Republicans that voted is not that different than 2018. It was in like the mid 60s.
We've got an operation that gets our voters engaged.
It's not that Republicans showed up in force in 2022. They showed up the same. It's that Democrats didn't show up.
And that leads us to present-day Florida. There are more Republicans in the state now, and the Democratic Party is trying to rebuild. And truthfully, they have had recent local successes, including here on the Suncoast. For the final part of our series, we'll look into where Florida is now and what the state looks like politically in the near future. That'll air in 2 weeks here on SNN, and you can catch all parts on SNNTV.com. Just hover over news at the top of the page and click politics.